First of all, I'd like to invite Kunal. Kunal, thanks for being with us today. It's a pleasure to speak to you again, and I think your value and your expertise there in the industry is going to be of great help to all the listeners today who have logged in. And yeah, so I think before we started, I think just a big thanks to the Red Seer team for coming up with this idea of this index. And this is the third edition now. Over the last two editions, we have seen how this index is actually now becoming more sort of a benchmark for a lot of brands to calibrate where they're what are the key issues which is causing like sort of a problem in their customer delight, and how do they like further improve their customer delight as they continue growing. The market is becoming more than competitive now, and as you would actually go through the report, you will realize that the median performance of the entire market has actually gone up in this particular quarter, which is a great thing for the market. Before taking any more time, I think would love to invite Kunal, and I think there's a whole bunch of interesting questions we want to ask him, especially related to D2C and his experience in this entire space. So, welcome, Kunal. I think a few words from you before we start.
Thanks, Abhishek. It's as I told you, I can never say no to an invite from you, and it's a pleasure being here. And this seems like a great initiative, and I'm glad to get the opportunity to talk about D2C and anything else you want to talk about as well.
No, I think we'll probably today's focus, I think, is going to be how we are seeing some of the D2C brands. That's the theme of this particular quarter that we have taken in, and I think your experience, especially with respect to investing in a lot of wonderful brands over the last couple of years. I think this is something that the listeners are more than eager to hear it directly from your mouth. So I think before taking any more time, I'll jump directly into my first question for you. And I think the idea is to get a larger market view from your view as a founder of an e-commerce company, as well as an ace investor, what we look at to you in the market today. And I think I'll probably start with a very fundamental question, which we also hear a lot of times today, like for all the founders who are actually looking to start something in the direct to consumer space or looking to build a brand, where do you expect, or which are those sectors where you expect to see a lot of action coming in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I get asked that question more often than you would imagine, because I think it's at some level D2C has become this gold rush of sorts in the last few years. I remember, we started investing in the direct to consumer space back in 2012, before it was called direct to consumer, right? With Bewakoof, and which I know has been one of Shadowfax's early customers as well, or Beardo in 2014, when people were wondering why are you investing in, products that grow facial hair for men. This is before Virat Kohli grew a beard. And so I think but now to present day, where there are so many breakout D2C companies, and obviously they are very attractive businesses because they have high margins, they are usually profitable in many cases, there is minimal dilution for the founders and the early investors, so there's tremendous amount of value creation in a short period of time, and a great degree of stability and low volatility in the overall journey of the company, which is not necessarily the example, or not necessarily the experience of many technology businesses or other consumer businesses, where there is typically a lot of volatility, there is cash burn, there's a lot of fundraising, and hence dilution. Your question, Abhishek, was, which sectors are going to see a lot of action. Actually, I would turn it on its head and say, which sectors I'm struggling to figure out which sectors will not see action from a D2C standpoint, right? I've been saying for some time that by 2025, we likely have more than $100 million plus D2C brands. And when I started saying this about 2 years ago, everyone said, "Oh, but there isn't even one." Right? Since then, there are now already more than a bunch. My sense is probably 10 plus already. And many that got started over the last couple of years are going through this geometric growth story in geometric progression that we will likely see many of them breach that milestone in the next couple of years. If we look around, almost every category is getting disrupted, right? These are generally very high margin products that haven't been innovated by large global companies for very long, and hence one doesn't have to often look very far in terms of determining what is going to get disrupted next. The one thing I would say is that having seen the journey of Bewakoof or a Mamaearth or a Beardo or Oziva or many others from the earliest days of those businesses, almost all direct to consumer brands when they were starting seemed like never seemed they would become as big as they would for some structural reason or the other. Some structural reasons could have been that the incumbent brands are too strong. They've been investing hundreds or thousands of crores for many years. How can an upstart brand ever displace them? Or the ASPs are too small and the fulfillment costs will never get recovered. Um, or they are too infrequent and hence CAC will never get recovered. There were always many reasons thrown out for why it would not work. But credit to the founders who made it work, and then obviously you know, uh, cleared the path for many others to come in other categories. So in a nutshell, I don't want to give a prescriptive answer as to which categories will get disrupted. I feel almost every category will get disrupted by D2C. It's usually a question of figuring out the supply chain and finding a unique point of view on where there is a wedge in the market with which the brand can enter. Like I think it's always best to explain things with examples. Like with Mama Earth, they took this good for you or toxin free approach for baby products, which they expanded to mothers and then the entire family. Beardo is a bit obvious. I think they were sort of playing in a white space. But almost every brand out there tends to form a unique point of view as to what is their reason to exist and point of differentiation, and then they create proof points around it.
Got it. That's a very interesting outlook of like defining one very strong parameter which differentiates you from some of the other brands. One very interesting fact which people should know about what is happening, especially in the US, around some of what we call as the digital native brand or the direct to consumer brands today, which have taken a very, very digital sort of an approach. In US, in the last 5 years, there are approximately 500,000 brands which have actually set up their shops. And again, 90% of these brands actually sell purely online. There is absolutely no offline element associated with it. Now, just like in one market, that's what is happening. And I think that trend is probably catching up in India as well today. I mean, we look at like there's so many support ecosystems which are actually getting funded, which will just enable some of these brands to build in, which is again a great thing for a market to develop in. Now, often, like when I am talking to some of these founders, and like there is a very interesting debate that generally comes in. Okay, one is like, should as a strategy when you are thinking about building a brand, thinking about building a catalog out there, should you go deep and like let's say you pick up a single category, you build products in that category, or do you go wide where you basically pick up like a wide range of catalog and try to build on that? What do you think, Kunal, works probably best in the Indian market today to what you have seen, I think, from a success point of view?
Yeah, I think I always hazard giving sage advice like this because then people sort of troll me on social media saying, "Oh, but look at this one example that didn't follow it and was still successful." So look, there are many paths to success. Let me preface whatever I say next with that. That said, I feel that in general, I would say maybe 70% of the or 80% of the brands I've seen succeed have taken a very sharp, limited, and very, very strong point of view on a particular category and how it will evolve. And generally, they would start with very few products, try and find product market fit, both for the unit economics, the pricing, and whether they are actually solving a customer need or not. Is the need only in the founder's mind, or is the need actually being expressed by consumers and they are voting with their money for that? So from the for the most part, it is very critical to identify what is the customer need more than getting caught up with should you go horizontal, should you go very deep. If you find a need, you will create a product suite, hopefully a limited one. Once that sees success, then you expand the product suite, right? That's how most of the companies, if you look at Wakefit, they started with mattresses, over a period of time cushions, and now chairs, and now furniture and everything. But they started with the basic core need, which was that mattresses were expensive, probably not great quality, and really cumbersome to buy. Pretty much every brand that I've seen succeed in an enduring manner in the D2C space had a very strong instinct around an unmet customer need or a friction point for consumers. But one thing I want to add here is that generally the journeys of the direct to consumer brands start with spotting a trend, but then the best ones actually start creating trends also. Example, big case in point would be, again, I mean, let's take Bamar's example, given we were talking about them. They started with figuring out that these toxin free shampoos and creams, etc., for children were not as easily available in the market. However, over a period of time, as they went broader and saw more success, they started creating trends like onion oil, or various other types of oils, and created another entire suites around those trends that they almost seeded in the market, right? Which are obviously highly effective products. However, they created the trend, and then they owned the trend also after that. So I think that's a very important evolution that most successful D2C brands need to go through. Otherwise, this is a very competitive space. The moment one company starts succeeding, starts seeing rapid growth with great margins and profitability, oftentimes the space gets crowded within months.
Got it, got it. That's very helpful, Kunal. Now, just a follow-up question, not related to product catalog, but more in terms of, let's say, if one is a founder and you're setting up your own D2C shop, I think one very provided obviously there is indefinite capital, you would want to ideally do everything in house. Okay, but that's not the luxury that most of the people or most of the founders face in today's world. People always have to take a call what is important and what potentially is not a differentiator for you. Now, if we were to talk about, especially with respect to a certain brand, and if you have to build a certain brand, what element would you specifically probably guide our listeners right now in terms of that this is something that you should, let's say, never outsource, or these are some of those aspects which you should never do it in house. Let's say you are building a brand, like probably a lifestyle brand, but I mean, what is it that should definitely people like take it as a core of the business?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, they should definitely outsource all deliveries to Shadowfax. So that goes without saying. I don't think there are any second thoughts or any other options in the market but to outsource all your 100% of your deliveries only to Shadowfax. Um,
That's kind of you.
that's the one. I feel that tech, like the platform itself, you can use off the shelf Shopify or similar platforms for a very long period of time. There is often an agitation that founders feel that they have to build their own tech and own platform and own e-commerce engine. It's absolutely unnecessary in the early days. These platforms, I remember 5 6 years ago, maybe were not as evolved, but now are just incredible in their
Yeah.
stability, in their features, in their resilience. Two companies recently that went public in the US, like Figs and Oatly, they're large, decent sized D2C brands. They went public. They operate on Shopify, right? So if public companies with multi-billion dollar market caps can operate on Shopify, I'm sure starting like a D2C brand starting up can also feel some degree of confidence in using Shopify or similar platforms. I do feel that the internal team of a D2C brand should always stay very small. And a lot of focus should go in the product, the brand, and the marketing. These are essentially product and marketing businesses, right? These are not tech businesses. Tech is just a mere enabler. Obviously, a more efficient, prudent use of tech will deliver better results, but it's not going to be a major differentiator. What is going to be a differentiator is the quality of the product, the margins of the product, the innovation pipeline that you have, so that you always have, five more products cooking in the pipeline, some of which will work, some of which won't. Um, thinking deeply about the brand, spending a lot of time with your customers, figuring out what are they liking, what are they not liking, finding innovative ways of marketing without spending a lot of money, using social media, influencers, various types of guerrilla marketing, surrogate marketing, maybe effective and efficient use of celebrities, right? Like all the, I would say 80% of the team's energy should be going into just product, brand, and marketing. And then the remaining 20% is just a necessary evil, if I may, that they have to, where they need to just make sure that the tech and the operations just, or the delivery operations, customer support operation just works. I don't think that's a point of major differentiation. I think customer service can be a point of differentiation over a period of time, but in the early days, customers are just going to try and they want to make sure they get a great product that comes as advertised.
Got it. It's super helpful, Kunal. I think that must have given our listeners some very, very precise answers uh, to work on. Moving forward, I think the last question I have for you, and I think the earlier questions were more related to probably more like early stage founders, but I think this one question that I have is mostly around, let's say you have identified your product market fit, you have understood who your real customer, real product is going to be, and now you want to scale it 10x. What is your advice to those founders, or what are those areas which one should be aware of as they plan to probably expand 10x into this particular domain?
Yeah, I think the answer, Abhishek, really varies from category to category. Some categories will not become 10x that fast, right? And some categories will, just by virtue of their frequency of purchase, by virtue of the size of the market, um, or the incumbents that are already there, or the behavior shift it demands. But we have seen enough that have gone through the 10x, 100x journey also. See, the trajectory of most of these D2C brands generally starts with some amount of insight that this is a white space, coming up with a high margin product that with of very high quality, and then using digital marketing as an arbitrage while there is still a white space, probably in the first 12 months. In hindsight, I've mostly seen that the direct to consumer companies that broke out eventually, they hit escape velocity within the first 12 months of birth, right? And
Got it.
if they didn't hit escape velocity in the first 12, 18 months, it actually became, it's not that they can't be done. It did become materially harder because then other people come in, by other players come in, and just the arbitrage completely shrinks. Um, but even for large brands, eventually the arbitrage shrinks, right? And what will create more enduring growth, or whether it's 5x, 10x, or 100x, is investing in the brand, investing in the quality, making sure you're optimizing margins without increasing price for the end customer, building a community from the very early days, even if it's on WhatsApp, doesn't need to be like big tech enabled, feature rich community. Starting taking even baby steps on building content, because content is just so critical in bringing in traffic, which is unpaid over a period of time. Fortunately, there are so many places to sell. There are multiple marketplaces. There are direct to consumer. A lot of the offline retail is now creating a pull for successful D2C brands. There are many, many channels now to maximize sales, and each channel has its own captive base of customers. Frequently used D2C brands versus or those that have subscriptions versus that are infrequent. Obviously, the frequent ones tend to go through that 10x journey a lot more than the infrequent ones. But the infrequent ones typically tend to, let's say, like a mattress company, etc. While they may be relatively infrequent, but the amount of economics they're able to generate in that one transaction is tremendous, right? And it creates an outsized LTV for that brand. But then they can then cross sell with furniture, etc.
Yeah.
Many brands have used influencers incredibly effectively to create that
Mm.
10x as well. But in summary, I would say it starts with great product based on a market insight with high margins and reinvesting the margins into digital marketing to take advantage of a limited window of arbitrage that exists. But thereafter, using that escape velocity and
Mm.
create more enduring levers of growth around content, community, better quality, more pipeline of products, new channels of sales, et cetera, et cetera.
This is super helpful, Kunal. I think we have one question from one of our listeners. I'll probably take that as one question before we conclude this. So I think as we are seeing probably this upcoming festive season coming up over there, what are some of these ideas that probably companies are taking to create a customer delight, especially with respect to D2C space? So I think that's one question. I have a take on it, but probably Kunal, if you have anything, otherwise I'll take this one.
Yeah, um, I feel in the end, while one can do a lot of delight around packages and post purchase customer support and CRM, fundamentally, I tend to think of the key driver of growth of a D2C brand to be the product itself, right? So, which means that at the end of the day, if you are a reasonably established D2C brand, customers want new, like fresh selection all the time, particularly if you're more lifestyle oriented. And I would say that it's not what I'm saying is not rocket science, but oftentimes brands don't do a great job of it either. But that is probably the single biggest driver. Just have a great selection of fresh products that people have not seen before but are backed by some instinct or insights from the consumers, and obviously fast delivery.
Yeah. No, I think on the fast delivery, I think that's one space where we are also seeing a lot of action in. And there is one line which I have just been hearing way too often in the last couple of months. And this is something that probably all the listeners over here should, I think, take it back. And this is something like if you are building a D2C brand, like think about it and how can you actually enable something like this to happen? And that one simple line is that if a customer is, let's say, placing an order by 10 p.m., can I deliver that order the next day itself? That single thing of doing that next day sort of a delivery creates a incredible customer delight. It actually takes you exactly where probably an Amazon Prime service is. And if you look at a market like a US, I think this is one space where a lot of actually third party support has also come in. A lot of companies are coming in and basically solving this problem for brands as well. And this is something which where basically if a brand also acquires a customer, that customer is not running away to an Amazon sort of a platform and then buying from there. Because if Amazon is delivering the next day, the customer is not going to come back to your own platform, and that's going to eat up your margins as well. So I think that's one specific thing which I see a lot of brands actually prepare for this upcoming season. I think that's pretty much it
No, I
for now.
agree. I completely agree.
Yeah. Okay. I won't take much time over here. I think over back to the Red Sea team. Thank you, Kunal, for joining in. I think it's been a pleasure hearing you speak. And good luck with all the investing that you're doing. We are hearing some crazy stories in the market today. So I think to all the D2C founders, you know who to reach out to when you need to raise capital here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek. Good to see you, Aditi.